everybody! So today we're finally going to be reading a new-ish story. This is the sequel to Abyssal. I think it was Abyssal Attractions. I believe so, but this is the sequel to that. So it is this continued free rewriting, and I already have known this for a hot minute or so, but we're still going to read it because it hasn't been updated in about, I would say, a couple years. Hasn't been updated since 2021. So it's 2024. So it's been a hot minute, guys. It's been a hot minute. If they ever do update the story or rewrite it or something like that, I may most likely potentially read it. I'll just have to really keep in touch and whatnot. If they don't, well, they don't. It's fine. So I don't know if the plot or anything will change if they do potentially rewrite it, and if they do, well, y'all can let me know in the future if you like the old version or the new version. This only does have 12 chapters, so it's pretty easy for us. But anyways, the author, as you guys know it, is Phantom Heart 8, and this is the summary. You knew from the very moment you laid eyes on Hoolen that your life would be changed forever. You just had no fathom on how much it would change. Nightmares, scars, and so much more haunt you every day. Now, in the forested countryside of Japan, you live with Ko, Adimu, and your newborn son, Caiman. You try to get over the events that haunt you every day, but the monsters that cause these events are not so willing to let you be that easily. I know, guys. Ooh, I know. I know. This is a before story now. Hello everyone, welcome to Abyssal Alterations, sequel to Abyssal Attractions. See, I got it right. If you haven't read the first book, I recommend it. Quick note, I make up most of the stories as I go, so sometimes I really don't know what will happen later in the story. Warnings. Then these are some extra warnings. Gore, psychological trauma, PTSD, things like that. And some extras. And down the abyss you go. Alright. But before we get started, guys, let's get to hear those warnings. Extra warnings, right? For the warnings going into these chapters, there will be mentions of panic attack. Well, a detailed mention of a panic attack. PTSD, nightmares, monsters, because this is Abyssal Attractions, the sequel to it after all. Biting, blood, attempting to kill, mental health problems, spiders, and trauma. For the spiders, if y'all listen to all the videos of Abyssal Attractions, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you know, you know. But yeah, those are all thy warnings for this chapter. If you guys are not happy with thy warnings, do not watch thy video or thy sequel, because there will probably be a lot of mentions of all of these warnings. You have been warned. Abyssal Alterations, Part 1, Prologue. Hoolen, no! The beast heard her scream. He hated how scared her voice sounded. Hoolen, stop! It's going to kill you! No, he had time. He just had to grab this stupid thing and get her back. If it would just stop moving, then he could grab it. The beast let out a roar of rage as it eluded him once more. He never ever heard the sound of the machine firing up. He finally grabbed onto the metal flyer with one of his tentacles. He started to reach another one to grab his love, but he never got far. He only heard the sound of his beloved scream once more. There was a big boom behind him, and he turned his head. Was it the machine? No. There was no way it could have gone its sights on him that fast. No more thoughts could come to him after the thundering sound as his head exploded with agony, as half of his face was ripped off in the explosion that barely missed his entire head, exposing raw flesh and the white skull to the world. The fire scorched his flesh, and he could feel it sizzle. Only for a second, though, until his nerves were burned dead. His remaining tentacles fell limply around his maw as blood cascaded out of his face like a waterfall. He let go of the craft, and as he fell backwards into the ocean, gurgling up blood and seawater from his mouth and gills. He could not hear anything anymore. Not the waves, not the machine, not his polyp, not even a ringing. Everything was quiet. He tried to let out one last roar, but he could not get anything out with all the blood rushing down his throat and into his lungs. He reached his claw up one last time in an attempt to get his love back into his hold, but she was too far into the sky, and he was sinking. He did not even see her, as his vision of the craft was concealed in bloody water. He could already feel the sharks nipping at his flesh, though he was sinking too fast for them to get any good bites. He did not even get to see his polyp one last time before his vision went black, and he sank into the dark hold of the abyss. Caiman's Childhood, Part 1, Introduction. You jumped slightly at the sound that awoke you, cracking a single eye open, still mostly in a slumberous daze. Did you hear something just now? Or was it a pre-dreamed illusion? You waited for a second, but the house was deathly silent. Nothing was stirring, as it should be in the dead of night. You slowly closed your eyes and relaxed your body. You did not hear the sound again, so it must have been you just hearing things. Okay, you definitely heard that. You took a deep breath in through your nose and sat up in your bed, the sheets rustling around you as you did. You looked down to find Caiman nowhere to be seen, although there was a small indent where he had been just a little bit ago. In fact, it still felt slightly warm. He would usually curl up into your side or sleep in his crib next to your bed, but he was not there either. He was out and about now. For what reason exactly, you were unsure. Baby, what are you doing? You called into the dark hallway behind your slightly cracked open door. The splatting stopped at the sound of your voice. It was now nothing but silent once more. You pulled the blankets off from you and stepped into the cold hardwood floor, the chilliness sending a sharp jolt through your legs. You walked to your door and cracked it open more, taking in the mostly dark hallway before you, lit up slightly by moonlight. You scanned the floor for signs of your missing son. You tried to ignore the sense of slight dread that set upon you when you were talking in the dark hallway. Memories of pitch black cave tunnels filled your mind. When your eyes reached the end of the hallway, they were locked onto the wide little white ones of Caiman. He was completely still, staring at you like a gargoyle from around the corner all the way across the hallway. You smiled a tad at him. What are you doing up so late, little man? Do you have any fathom of how late it is? You spoke softly to him as you were still half asleep. He stared at you for a moment longer before turning around and disappearing behind the corner, the sound of his little webbed claws smacking the wood floor getting quieter and quieter. You smiled to yourself and followed the sound of his little claws. It did not take you long for you to catch up with him, as he was very small and often would crawl on all fours like a dog. He definitely looked more like Hoolen than he did human. Where the abyss keepers had roundish barrel bodies, much like that of bears, Caiman was slimmer and had more human-shaped limbs with longer arms and legs. That he's used more wandering about on all fours clumsily like a puppy. You hardly ever saw him stand on his hind legs. Never mind walking on them. He had ears too, but they looked more like elf ears with their little points. You rounded the corner into the living room and found him sitting underneath a window. bathing himself in the moonlight. The wind was whistling outside, and his tentacles curled and swirled to the song of the breeze. The beautiful trees of the Japan countryside were visible in the light outside the window. His eyes matched the very moon that shone light down upon him, wide and glowing white with an intelligent aura. Though also he had a hint of innocently stupid to his glow. You took a seat down on the floor, placing your hands onto your knees and looking over at your baby. As soon as you were down, he immediately padded over to you and curled himself in your lap, his tail laying around his legs much like a cat's would. The fins on it scratched you slightly, but they were mostly soft. "If you keep making a ruckus out here, you're going to wake up Grandma," you said softly to him. "You're referring to Adimu, who had taken on a grandmother-like role to your son." He lifted his face up and looked into your eyes. His breathing was mostly silent, with a little tiny huff every now and then. He reached up and ran a hand over his head. He squeaked slightly and lifted his head to wrap his tentacles around your wrist and through your fingers. He was smiling a toothless smile underneath the mass of moving appendages. You wrapped your hands steadily around him and lifted him up. He struggled slightly, but you weren't having any of it. Mom was saying it was time for bed, so it was time for bed. "Nuh-uh, baby. We'll play in the morning, all right? But right now you need to sleep, and so do I," you said, walking back down the hallway and into your room. You placed him in his spot again, but he tried to shoot back off the bed and aim for the still open door. You were faster, though. You grabbed onto him again and sturdily set him into his spot. "Do you want to sleep next to me or in your crib tonight, mister?" You said with hands placed on your hips and head tilted slightly. He went stiff for a second before huffing in defeat and burying himself in the blankets. You chuckled slightly at him before turning around and gently closing the door, all the way with a small click. You gently laid down next to Caiman, wrapping the blankets around him so he'd be warm as he snuggled in close to your stomach. Light little purrs terminating from him filled your ears. It helped calm your mind into a relaxed state again. You listened to the cute little sounds until they disappeared and were replaced with his gentle breaths as he fell asleep. You ran your fingers over his head and behind his ears. Petting him became a habit to help him sleep a while ago, and you often found yourself still doing it, long after he had fallen into slumber until you yourself fell asleep too. You ran your hand gently over the ridges along his head and shoulders. They were mostly hard, but smooth. His tentacles wiggled around slightly as you continued to pet him. The next thing you knew, you opened your eyes to find bright sunlight shining in through the windows, casting warm beams onto you. You stayed still for a moment, enjoying the warmth of your bed and in your post-sleep state. You stretched your back out and reached a hand to pet Caiman again, only to find once more that he was once again not there, and there was only a little blanket crater where he had previously been. You slipped out of bed and pushed open the cracked open door so you could get out. You could smell the tempting aura of breakfast wafting over to you from the kitchen, where you could hear the quiet voice of Adimu. You ran a hand over your head as you walked down the hallway and into the kitchen, taking in the sight of Ko at the stove making a meal of pancakes and eggs, while Adimu teased Caiman with a hearing at the counter. She held it above him while he reached up with his little webbed hands. His facial tentacles wiggled around in excitement as he showed his famous toothless smile to the world. She saw you enter and offered a quick word of greeting, distracting her from the little one for a second, to which he seized the opportunity and jumped up, and snatching the fish from her fingers, swallowing the whole thing in one gulp and licking his tentacles of the oil. Even though he had no teeth, he was still able to eat solid foods, as long as they were not too big. When he was done cleaning himself, he saw you and stood up, reaching his little claws out for you. You walked over and picked him up, cradling him to your chest. He squirmed around so he was facing forward, and latched his tentacles to your hand, gently gumming on your fingers. You think his teeth were going to be coming in soon. You took a seat next to a demo at the countryside as your son nibbled away at whatever he could get his mouth on. You would often have to pry objects from him, much to his displeasure. He's a spry one, always wanting to waddle about and discover new things. Adimo said next to you, speaking in her native language, Swahili. They taught you long ago the languages so you could understand her. You smiled at her. I would just wish he would go to sleep when he needs to and not wake me up when he should be slumbering away, you commented, giving him a quick tickle behind his ear, which he gave a little squawk in protest to. Ko announced that he was done preparing breakfast and set plates full of food down in front of you two ladies, you both thanking him as he did. You did not miss how he quickly set yours down to avoid Caiman reaching out to him. He would usually avoid him if he could, wanting to keep his interactions with your son to a minimum. Your hand shot out and grabbed Caiman before he could leap onto the counter and make a mess of what was set in front of you. Now, little man, where are your manners? You said to him as he huffed, sitting down on your lap, his short little stubby legs hanging down while his tail flopped and tapped against the chair. You picked up the fork and scraped up some eggs and held it to Caiman, who would have tried to swallow the whole thing if you weren't careful. You took a bite yourself afterward. That was how breakfast went on until everything on the plate was gone. Adimo slowly stood up and strolled over to you, where she picked up a handkerchief and wiped Caiman's face clean with it, praising him and how well he behaved this morning. You smiled down at them and ran a hand over Caiman's head once more. She picked him up from your lap and carried him to the front room as you grabbed the plates to do some dishes. When the chore was done, you followed suit into the living room and took a seat on the couch, watching Caiman roll around on the floor with some toys. No sooner than you got down, he suddenly jumped into your lap with the excitement of a puppy, a little rubber teething toy dripping with slobber in his mouth. You laughed and grabbed him, bringing him up to your face, where you gave him a big smooch on the forehead. He pushed your face away with his little hands and jumped back onto the floor with a little thud. You leaned back into a more comfortable position, smiling contently as you watched your son play around. Such an innocent soul, completely unaware of the world outside. Caiman's Childhood, Part 2. Scars. You stood next to Ko along the counter side as you helped him prepare dinner for the family. Meat sizzled in the pan in front of you while you added various vegetables into a mix in the bowl next to the stove. In the background, you could hear the sound of an old radio playing some classical songs with relaxing orchestral music. Adimo liked to listen to them. It helped her sleep. It was good that she had something to help her sleep, as you had all had trouble with it one way or another. Ko had certain lotions and candles that helped soothe him, and you had your baby boy curled up next to you and purr. He always sensed when you weren't feeling the best and would purr to help calm your nerves. Sometimes even waking up from being rock dead asleep and immediately pushing up against you more. Pushing even more against you. Your thoughts were driven back to the present as you heard a light clinking sound. Behind you was Ko setting the table and preparing some drinks, humming as he smoothed out the tablecloth and gently set the plates and cups down, pouring the drinks into glasses. You turned back to your pan and the steam rising up hit you in the face. You took a long sniff. It could use a bit more sauce. You reached over to the counter and grabbed the one you were looking for, popping the lid off and dripping the brown sludgy liquid over the meats. The sizzling sound got louder with the new material, causing even more steam to rise up to your face. The sauce melted into the meat, sinking into it and making it juicy. There, that was better. You finished stirring it up before turning the oven off and grabbing the oven mitts and using them to bring the steaming pan over to the table where you would set it on an oven pad so it would not burn the table. You went back to the vegetable bowl and set it next to the pan, giving it a quick stir too. When everything was done, you and Co both looked at your neat handiwork. Damn, you're good. Damn, we're good, you said, and both of you burst out into a fit of chuckles. You both walked into the living room where Adimu napped peacefully on the couch with the radio tuning away. She rested in an upright position with her hands folded over her lap. Caiman, who was in there with her when you left the room to start dinner, was nowhere to be seen. A bolt of worry shot through you. It's not that he had not left alone for a little bit before, but he was still very young, not even a year old yet, and he was not to go outside at all cost. Even though he was less than a year old, he still understood you fairly well and knew what you were telling him, for the most part. You quickly scanned the room, and when you did not see him. You entered the hallway while Co woke Adimu up for dinner. You walked down the hallway, seeing if you could find any hint of where he had scuttled off to. As you walk down the corridor, you can hear the sound of bed springs repeatedly creaking from your room, with the door slightly cracked. You pushed it open and found Caiman jumping on the bed playfully, bouncing only a couple inches off the blankets. His tentacles flopping around his face as he squealed in delay when seeing his mother enter the room. You leaned against the door with your hip and arms crossed. If you keep doing that, you're gonna fall and get yourself hurt, young man, you said to him with a smile, your eyes shining brightly at him. He ignored you as he continued to jump up and down. Then, slowly, to show you just how much of a little shit he was, he purposely launched himself off the bed and face planted into the hardwood floor. Alright. You gasped and quickly surged forward to him, grabbing him and lifting him up to examine him to see if he was alright. He was, no scratch or scrape whatsoever as he looked at you with his little baby face and then slipped out of your grasp, climbing onto the bed and starting to jump up and down once more. You shook your head at him and let out a sigh. You stood up and reached out to grab him again, telling him that it was time for dinner and that if we did not hurry, it would be cold by the time you got there. He dodged your grasp and quickly waddled out of the room, giving cute little pants as he ran away from you, his webbed claws smacking the wooded floor with splitting sounds. You laughed and walked out of the room, your legs in just... What? You laughed and walked out of the room. Okay. Your legs in just walking speed, easily catching up to him with his little legs, picking him up as he gave out a little baby laugh. You laughed along with him and gave him a kiss on the cheek, his tentacles coming up and wrapping around your head, and he nibbled on your nose. You walked to the kitchen where you set him down in a special chair next to yours and Adimu's with Ko's sitting across from him. The old woman smiled down at him and ran a shaking hand over his head as he obediently sat down as much as a cat would. You spooned some of the meat and vegetables onto Adimu's plate first, giving her as much as she wanted before moving over and putting a small, baby-sized amount of Caiman's plate out of his reach at the moment so he did not go crazy and start making a mess. You and Co got your chosen amount and you sat down and everyone started digging in, with you giving Caiman small bites. If you did not, he would jump onto the plate and fling his dinner absolutely everywhere. You know, as any baby would. Maybe not any baby, but okay. It tasted nice, maybe just a tad too much sauce. But nobody was complaining, so that was a good sign. Caiman was a little gentleman as he ate, eating all of his dinner and his greens, and in reward, you gave him a little side of clams. He loved the taste of bedavils, so they were kind of like treats or even dessert for him. When everyone was done, you collected the dishes, and Adimu chuckled at Caiman devouring his clams, and Co left the room to do whatever. You placed the dishes into the sink and started to clean them. Listening to Adimu play with Caiman, She pretended to steal his clams and eat them, to which he would whine, then make happy little sounds when she revealed that she did not, in fact, eat his tasty treat. His tentacles laying out in little spans as he did was closest to a laugh. You smiled contentedly as you listened to this go on. When all the dishes were done, you reached for a towel to dry your hands. You picked up and let out an ear-piercing shriek as a spider that was hiding underneath it was revealed. It was a light brown, almost a pale cream color, with small, beady black eyes. You jumped back and knocked into the counter and onto your back, no longer seeing the well-lit hallway, but dark caves. Dark eyes gleaming sinisterly at you from the darkness, and large pale legs clicked deeply into as the gigantic spider walked across your helpless form. The rock scraped your hands, and the cold choked you as the monster clacked its mandibles at you, revealing hints of sharp triangular teeth behind its fangs that dripped black venom. Your left leg started to burn in agony, like molten metal had replaced your blood. You scooted back away from the spider as it slowly clicked and locked its way to you. Deep growls ringing throughout the cave and deep into your skull. Your heart thundered against your ribcage. You could not breathe. Your lungs could not take in air. You were choking. Your throat constricted as if someone had their hands clamped around it. The beast loomed above you and trapped you underneath it as its legs formed a cage around you. It looked down at you with its deep, inky eyes that reflect no light. For there was nothing where you were now. The venom dripped off the fangs and onto your face. Then it lowered its head down close to yours, almost to where it almost was touching you. Its mandibles spread wide, revealing a mouth full of rows of pearly white triangular teeth. You clenched your eyes shut and tried your hardest to not take in any sort of air. Your lungs strained but could take in no oxygen. You were starting to get lightheaded. A light whimper reached your ears. It was Caiman. Where was he? Where was your baby? You opened your eyes again, and the monster was gone. Instead, your baby boy was huddled against your chest, whimpering and shaking as his tentacles wrapped around himself like some sort of self-hug. His wide eyes were so full of fear. You sucked in a large lungful of air and let out a heartbreaking sob. Looking past Caiman at Adimu and Co., who stood above you with worried expressions, you grabbed Caiman in your arms and shot past them, rushing down the hall and charging into your room where you crashed into your bed. You held your son close, and he clutched onto the front of your shirt tightly, still shaking and crying with you as tears dripped down from your face and fell and onto the bed underneath you, soaking the sheets as you almost screamed your heart out. Almost. You wanted so badly to scream out all of your fear and frustration, but not with Caiman right there, who was already shaking so bad and crying almost as hard as you were. Large tears dripping down his face and creating little rivers down his tentacles, adding to the soaked spots already on the bed. You sat up, still holding him to your chest as you wrapped the blankets around both of you, cradling your crying baby to you as he would disappear if you did not. You held onto him so tightly, craving the light of his innocent eyes, as they were the moonlight that lit your path away from the black ones that haunted your soul and out of the abyss. Caiman's Childhood, Part 3, Easter. You and Adimu were almost up all night making special Easter eggs for Caiman to hunt around the house for in the morning, or whenever the two of you would be able to get up. Caiman was not happy about spending the night in his crib, and a large part of the night you were listening to his cries as he shouted for you to come and get him off of this thing right now. The noise woke Co up, and he groggily walked into the kitchen to get himself a drink, not looking very pleased. But what else could you do? Caiman did have to learn that sometimes he needed to sleep in his crib, and since he was a baby, he was going to do what babies did when they were upset. Cry. Cry and make the whole world aware of how upset they were. Co basically passed out on the couch, guys. You draped a blanket over him so he would not get a cold. Caiman, too, eventually fell asleep, and at the silence, you got up and checked on him. Sometimes him going quiet meant that he escaped and was waddling around the house. You opened the door to see him sprawled out in his crib, snoring softly as he clutched one of those stuffed animals close. His tentacles wrapped limply around the bars, vibrating with each snore. Oh yeah, he definitely wore himself out. You quietly closed the door and got back to work with the Demu in the kitchen. The two of you talked all night about what you would give him as treats, where you would hide them, and so on, all up until the sun was only a couple hours away from rising. You hid the eggs around the house, making sure that they were on the ground, or at least where he could reach them. Adema was off to bed now. You decided you were going to take a quick shower first. You let the warm water run down you, relaxing your nerves. You leaned your head back as you let the droplets pour down your face gently, running down your face like a cascade of tears. A memory was coming up. You reached over and laid a hand on your stomach as it came to mind. In the memory, you were still holding your stomach, too, though it was still big and swollen with an unborn baby. You sobbed hot tears, your shoulders shaking hard as you cried your pain out to the metal room. The bundle in you, feeling your anguish, started to get scared and gave out a kick. You set your hand on your swollen tummy to calm him down, but it was no use. He could still feel your pain and gave out another kick. They're going to kill him, you cried out, and Ademu rubbed your shoulder, soothingly with one hand while the other reached down to your belly. Though the bundle still did not calm down, and the extra touch. I don't know what to do. They're going to kill my baby, you nearly shouted, rage and sorrow striking through your veins. They did not tell you outright their plans for your son, but the guards outside had big mouths, and even though the door to this metal room was thick iron, it was not completely soundproof. You looked to Ademu and Co., unsure of what to do. You curled around yourself, bringing your legs as close to you as you could before they squished against your belly. You could not, you could not let this happen. You could not let them get their hands on him. You were going to get out of here before he was born, but you were running out of time. You only had a couple weeks left. If you were lucky, you had to come up with a plan, and fast. You gripped onto your stomach one more time, feeling another light thump against the inside of your stomach. You popped out of your memory, noticing the water had gotten considerably cold now. How long had you been standing there? You had to get to bed. You had a big day tomorrow. You turned the shower off, shivering as you stepped out and quickly wrapped yourself in a towel, drying yourself off and slipping into some comfortable pajamas. You stepped out of the bathroom and tiptoed down the hall to your room, slightly opening the door and walking over to Caiman's crib, gently picking him up and making sure his tentacles did not get snagged against the bars. You carried him over to your bed and laid him against your chest as you got comfortable under the blankets. It did not take you long to fall into a deep slumber. It was late morning when you woke up, and you were greatly surprised to find that Caiman was still snoozed peacefully on you and not jumping around and bubbling on your ear like he usually would to wake you up. Oh well, he was a baby, and babies needed a lot of sleep to grow up and big and strong. You carefully picked him up and set him to the side. He squirmed slightly and made a little sound before going limp again, breathing softly and slightly purring in his sleep. You gave him a quick kiss on his eye ridge before sneaking out of the room. It seemed like everyone in this house was still asleep, though Co had moved back into his room. You walked to the kitchen to fix yourself up a quick drink. You put out a pot on the stove and waited for it to heat up so you can make your favorite hot drink. You looked around and saw that all the eggs you placed were still there. You smiled in excitement. It was Caiman's first Easter. You wanted it to be a good day. While you were waiting for the water to boil, you decided to go out in the backyard real quick. You walked out, feeling the cool, late morning air hit your skin with a small breeze. The grass was cold under your feet, but it was not that bad. You walked over back to the yard, to the small grave that you had all set for Asha. The flowers that you had planted were still there and growing, strong and beautiful, just like her. You wiped a small tear from your eye and smiled down at the grave. You wished she was still here. You liked to think that she would have taken up an aunt figure for Caiman, like a Demu took the grandmother role. At least, that's how you hoped it would have been. It could have turned out that she wanted nothing to do with him like Ko did, which you could understand in all honesty, after all the horrible things you had all gone through. Your thoughts were put aside as you heard a knocking come from the window, but when you looked up, there was no one there. You stood up and walked over to the window, peering in and trying to see what happened. Was there anyone even there? You placed your hands against the glass and got really close, trying to see. You let out a playful scream as Caiman popped up and splat his little hands and tentacles all over the glass, sucking on the glass with his toothless mouth, much like a suckerfish would. You laughed as you got up and ran to the back door, quickly opening and shutting it and running over to Caiman, where you picked him up and twirled him in the air, and with him in the air. He squealed happily and grabbed at you with his webbed hands, his short, stubby little legs kicking out in excitement. You brought him into the kitchen with you, sitting him down in his chair as you reached into the cupboards to prepare him breakfast. You decided you would prepare for the whole family, too. You got out all the ingredients to make your favorite breakfast meal while you prepared a more seafood option for your son. Everyone else woke up right on time. You just got it finished when Ko let Adimu in and helped her sit down. You set the table and prepared plates for everyone. You sat down in between Caiman and Ko, letting Caiman stuff his face with the things you laid out for him. Breakfast was a simple one. Everyone was in their own thoughts as they ate. The only sounds were the sounds Caiman made as he spoke out loud in his little sounds, whatever was going on in that little baby mind of his. Okay. You and Ademo smiled at each other as you all finished. It was time to let Caiman hunt around the house. The only reason he had not broken into the ones on the ground yet is that he did not know what was in them, so you would have to show him. Ko got out and thanking you for breakfast and left ready to go out. You and Ademo let Caiman go over to the first egg, but he paid no attention to it. It was just something on the floor to him. You cracked open the plastic casing open and showed him the treat inside. He stiffened up and quickly gobbled it out of your hand. Ademo let out a chuckle at his behavior. You led him to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until he was running all around the house like he was on crack trying to find all of the eggs. You and Ademo sat on the couch watching him scramble about. Whenever he would find one, he would jump onto the couch and set it on yours or her lap so that you guys could open it for him. Once he had found all the eggs, you and Ademo watched lovingly as he rolled around on the ground and played with his toys. You looked over and saw that she had drifted off to sleep. In fact, so did Caiman. He fell asleep on his back with his little chubby belly all up in the air. His tentacles splayed all around his face. You know what? A nap sounded fantastic right now. Even though you slept a good portion of the morning away, you picked Caiman up after laying a blanket over Ademo. Turning on the radio as background music for her, it helped her sleep. You carried Caiman to your room and laid him down next to you, getting comfortable and petting his head as he let out a small yawn in his sleep. He started to subconsciously purr as you continued to pet him. This sound eventually made you fall asleep as well. Caiman's Childhood, Part 4, A Limit. You cleaned the blood off your hands in the sink, wincing as the cold water stung your open wounds. Caiman had gotten his teeth, and they were sharp, shaped much like mako shark teeth. Now it was bound to happen eventually. He was still a small baby after all. When you were done washing it, you put some ointment on it before wrapping it up with some gauze from the medicine cabinet. You heard Ko call out for you down the hallway. You closed the cabinet and turned around, walking past the front door where Ademo watched Caiman. He was innocently sitting in the middle of the room. It was going to be a bit tougher now. He had gone into the habit long ago of gumming on your hand. Thus now you got bitten in the first place. The strange thing was now, you could have sworn that he did not have any this morning. It was as if they just appeared, granting you would just have missed it. A big thing to just miss, though. You would have seen them coming in, wouldn't you? You entered Ko's room and he shut the door behind you. He had sweat on his forehead as he rubbed his hands nervously. His round glasses were crooked on his nose. Ko, are you all right? You asked, concerned about what had put him in this state. He's tasted human blood now, YN, he said grimly. You narrowed your eyes slightly. What was he getting at? You tilted your head away from him slightly and raised an eyebrow. A silent sign for him to continue. What if this changes him? What if he craves the taste? He said hurriedly, jumping slightly when there was a bumping sound coming from the front room. You were a little appalled at what you were hearing right now. Your sweet baby Caiman becoming hungry for human flesh? Was that what he was trying to say? No matter how much you wanted to deny it, though, you could understand more than anyone what he was afraid of. You reached forward, grabbing him by the shoulders and looking deep into his eyes. Everything is going to be all right, Ko. Listen to me. Caiman is a smart cookie. He knows us, and he will learn what is right and what is wrong from us. He knew back there that he accidentally hurt me. I saw the little jump in his eye. He is still in his teething face. Now that his teeth are in, he will learn that it's wrong to bite now. You said, trying your best to reassure him. He still did not look like he was convinced. He still flicked his eyes to the door, almost like he kept expecting something to burst through and eat him. You reached up and cupped his face in your hand. Hey, remember, you are the reason that the baby is alive. You saved his life from the people who wanted to kill him. Have faith in the soul you gave a chance to, all right? You pleaded. You had always known he was never comfortable with Caiman, but it would just take time and a lot of effort. He clenched his eyes shut. A tear slipped out and slid down to the side of his nose. He started to shake with sobs, and you brought him in close. I can't get those eyes out of my head. Those damn purple eyes, he wailed, clutching you close. You could not help but start letting your own tears flow. You knew exactly how he felt. The eyes as black as ink haunted you every day, threatening to drag you down into their depths and drown you in their darkness. But you had a light now. You had a moon that shone through the shadowy waters, that let you see which way was up so you could swim to the surface. Those little white eyes were your light. A scratching sound suddenly filled the door, and you both jumped, looking at the door where it was originating. A small shadow showed from underneath, and a little whimper reached your ears. Caiman was looking for his mama, and he had found her. You pulled away from Ko, giving him one last pleading look before turning around and opening the door. Looking down, your son was impatiently looking up at you with upset eyes. How dare you leave him alone for so long? Oh, just how could you do that to him? You chuckled at him and picked him up with a huff. Dang, you were starting to get a little hefty. You shifted him around so that his back was cradled in your arm. You reached over and started to tickle his chubby little belly. His tentacle raised, and he opened his mouth offendedly, showing off his new little teeth. His little webbed hands reached up to push your hands away, and you kept teasing him as you walked to the bathroom. This little man needed a bath. In the weeks that passed, life was really no different. Ko still avoided Caiman as much as possible. You had gone a couple more times, but not out of malice or ill intent from your son, but from the pure and simple fact of he was still a baby. You were still making dinner for the family at the moment. Ko was out shopping, and Adimu sat at the table with Caiman, trying to make him form any words. He would make sounds, but no words had slipped from him yet. Would he ever be able to talk? Only time would tell, you guessed. There was a gasp from the table, and you swiftly turned around. Caiman was gone, and Adimu had her hands in her mouth in shock as she looked wide-eyed towards the living room. You swiftly put what you were holding down and rushed around the counter, stopping next to Adimu and looking at your baby who was now in the living room. Something was happening. Something was different. It only took you a second to realize that you had gotten a good look at the situation. He was trying to morph his limbs. You had wondered if he was ever able to do this. After all, he got all of his looks from his father's heritage. His front arms were longer now, and looking closely, you could see the slow growth of them. Your heart pounded in your chest, your lungs constricting. You could not look away from the scene. It was horrifying and captivating at the same time. One of his arms started out lengthening the other one by a few inches, throwing him a bit off balance. And to your surprise, your son let out a small snarl in irritation. Adimu screamed suddenly, and your heart stopped as the arm that was growing suddenly and very visibly snapped. Excuse me, guys. You sped past Adimu and into the front room where Caiman shrieked and ran in circles with his broken arm dripping blood into puddles on the floor. You snatched him up, ignoring the stinging in your arm as he gripped your hand hard with his good hand, digging his claws painfully into your skin. That was the least of your worries right now, though. You tried to keep him still as you examined his arms. The bone had splintered and now was sticking through flesh out of his arm. The whole limb was shrinking back to normal length now, causing the bone to crack more with every inch that it shrunk. Your son screamed in agony, and there was nothing you could do. You looked at Adimu with wide, frantic eyes full of tears. She stood shakily by the table, her hand still up to her face. "Get the supplies from the medicine cabinet," you shrieked at her, and she dumped before moving as fast as she could to the hallway. That was the best you could do right now. You could not take him to the hospital. You cradled him close to try and keep him from moving too much as his arms finally settled back into place with one final snap. Adimu rushed back to you and opened the medical kit. Oh God, what were you supposed to do? You did not know how to treat this, nor did Adimu or Co. The closest you had ever gone to was fixing up some marine life in your earlier career. You were the only people that could do anything, though. If anyone else saw him, it would lead to the people who tried once to kill him right up to your doorstep. It was the very reason why he was never allowed outside. If he was seen, it would all be over. You twisted him around so that his back was pressed to your stomach, and you had to do your best. It was all that could be done. You stood next to the window in your room, shaking like a leaf from head to toe, refusing to take your eyes off your now sleeping son. His arm was wrapped firmly to his chest as he slipped on his side. You were absolutely covered in dried blood, but you were so scared to look away to change, afraid that something else might happen. Tears blurred your vision, and you tried your hardest not to cry too loudly. You had failed him today. Your son suffered so badly today, and you could do nothing to help him. There was nothing else that could be done, though. You were trapped. You took a seat on the chair next to the bed, and laid a gentle hand on his head, his tentacles reaching up in his sleep to wrap around your fingers. What were you going to do? He was growing fast, almost a year old, and becoming more like Hoolen every single day. The world was not ready for him, but he would not stay in this house forever. You were his mother. You wanted to protect him, give him the whole world. But how could you do that when the world would kill him for what he was? Maybe he inherited the ability to heal as well. Hopefully, for no legitimate doctors in this house. What would you guys do if something worse happened? Just the thought made your heart ache painfully. What were you going to do? Just, wow. That went from 50 to 1,000 real quick. I would just, wow. That's intense. I mean, I'm glad it has its good moments, but damn, it's intense. Gosh darn. So I have a question for you guys. Do you guys think that maybe as Caiman grows older, he will eventually run away, kind of, to a nearby ocean or river or whatever, to try and find some type of species close or near of him, or maybe potentially find Hoolen? Let me know in the comments down below, because honestly, I don't know how to phrase the question any better than I just did right now. Honestly, I think he's probably going to be the one to find Hoolen, or Hoolen's going to be the one to find his son before he finds us. So that's what I'm thinking, honestly. If the story does get that far, I'm not too sure, but you know what? If it does, it does, and I'll be happy. I'm currently editing my videos on CapCut PC right now because it has way more options and I'm able to detail it much better. And it's just a bit more, it's more freedom, more control. And I'm able to get videos more specified and just more how I like it, and much easier to edit. Because if I edit it on my phone like I used to do all the time, it would take me, like, think of me combining all the videos. Like, this is like 40 minutes right now. Combining like 30, 40, 10 seconds all together. And then having to see that like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. The PC, like CapCut PC, I only have to go through it like max, I would say 3 times. It's much easier, but honestly, it's much easier. But let me know what you guys think. If the videos are a little different, if they're a little better, just let me know. I am trying my best, you know, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it, though. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. I said I would cut this short, and I will. Sorry. But your girl's gotta go. I shall see you on the next futuristic video. Bye and peace, y'all.